Hey, what's going on, guys? So some of you have probably seen the title of the video and are probably now panicking, like, oh no, what am I gonna do? They're doing what? They're banning black people. Oh no, I need my hair back. You know, please relax, guys. It's all good. It's not that deep. Basically, I saw this video of this black girl from London, and she has been documenting her hair journey. She got a hair transplant, right? So she made a video recently about why she decided not to go to a clinic called Longevita and why she ended up going to another clinic instead. And her reasoning behind it was very interesting, and that's kind of what prompted me to make this video. So for those of you who don't know, Longevita is to black women what Asli Tarkan is to black men. So basically, like a while back, one black woman would have went to Longevita, documented her hair transplant journey, and she would have got good results. And then a bunch of others would have saw that video and then just followed. And it was basically the same thing with Asli Tarkan. There was like one black guy who went to that clinic, got good results, documented his journey on YouTube, and then a bunch of other guys saw the video and just followed. Now, both of these clinics have had kind of mixed results. You know, some people get good results, some people get, you know, not so good results. So anyway, this girl from England, she was planning on going to Longevita to get her hair transplant. And some of you might be wondering, like, why would women get hair transplants? Well, the reason is some people get what's called traction alopecia. It's when you get like a tight hairstyle, whether like cornrows or braids or whatever, and that constant pulling on the hair follicles results to traction alopecia. So, you know, the hair follicles get damaged, they get pulled out, and they don't grow back. So, and it usually occurs around the hairline because that's where a lot of the hairs are pulled. And I believe actually that's what happened to me. I believe most of my hair loss came from traction alopecia back from when I was a teenager, and I used to get cornrows for a few years. Yeah, that constant pulling on my hair, I think, damaged my hairline. And ever since I cut those off when I was around 20, I noticed that my hairline had changed and it looked a lot more receded. I didn't know it was traction alopecia at the time. I thought I was just going bald. So I thought that, you know, by the time I'm 30, I was going to go completely bald. But anyway, like as time went on, you know, 5 years went by and my hairline remained the same. Another 5 years went by. I was 30 at that time. Again, my hairline still remained the same, no further hair loss. Again, another 5 years went by, this time I'm 35, and still no further hair loss. I still had that receded hairline from the traction alopecia, but I didn't occur any further hair loss from that. And I wasn't on any kind of, you know, hair loss preventative medication like finasteride or dutasteride or minoxidil or anything like that. I wasn't doing anything. And furthermore, just going onto my immediate family tree, like if you look at my mother's side, my granddad, who's nearly 84, he still has a full head of hair. My dad, before he died, he was like 58 or something. He was in his late 50s, and he also had a full head of hair. So yeah, I think genetically I'm not really predetermined to go bald, but because of that traction alopecia, I believe that's what caused my hair loss. And not everyone succumbs to traction alopecia. Like some people just have very, very strong hair genetics, so they can get away with wearing, you know, cornrows and other tight hairstyles for years and years and years without any hair loss. You know, they're just blessed genetically in that way. But yeah, like I said, a lot of people do get traction alopecia, both men and women who wear tight hairstyles. But anyway, so this girl, she got traction alopecia from wearing tight hairstyles, and she was looking to get a hair transplant. Her first option was Longevita because, like I mentioned before, it's a very popular clinic for a lot of black women. And what she found out was that Longevita are now doing what's called a FOX test. So for those who don't know, basically a FOX test is basically a preliminary test before the actual hair transplant procedure. They'll basically sit you down and you'll still have to go through all the anesthesia and everything, and they'll extract around 50 to 100 grafts from the back of your head, from your donor area, just to test. They'll test how easy it is to actually extract the hair without damaging it. Now, with black people in particular, you know, we've got very curly afro hair texture, and the thing is, it's not just curly on the outside, it's curly on the inside, so the root is actually curls in. And because obviously you can't see through skin when the doctor or technician is doing the extractions, he doesn't know, you know, which direction, you know, the actual hair graft root is curling in. So it's very easy to actually damage the hair graft as he's doing the extractions. That's why I believe the hair graft survival rate is lower amongst people with afro hair than it is to people with straight hair. And so that's why I think they started doing this FOX test. And it's not just Longevita that are doing it. Apparently a few other clinics are also starting to do it now as well. But I think what prompted Longevita to do it is the fact that they were getting such mixed results with people with afro hair. And I think, you know, that's kind of why they've started to do this FOX test, just to see, you know, if the client is going to be viable for a hair transplant or not. But the reason why that put this girl off from going to Longevita is it would have meant that she would have had to travel all the way to Turkey from England, and if she failed that FOX test, they would have just sent her home. So, you know, she would have came all the way there for nothing. She would have booked time off work and, you know, went through the anesthesia and the whole procedure of taking the 50 to 100 grafts to test, failed the test, and would have got sent back home. And she didn't really like that idea, so she ended up going to another clinic that doesn't require a FOX test. So she went to a clinic called Heva Clinic, or Heva Clinic, however you pronounce it. I'd never really heard too much about that clinic. I'd heard a couple of things, but that's about it. I don't really know too much about it. But anyway, she went to that clinic. They didn't do a FOX test, and she ended up getting a really good result. Like, I saw her month 5 video. Her month 5 results looked better than a lot of people's final results. That's how good her hair transplant came out. And the thing is as well, she's got very, very tight, you know, afro curls. Like, her hair is curlier than mine. Like, I would say she's probably like a 4C or a 4B when it comes to afro hair texture. I would say I'm probably like a 3C or a 4A, something like that. But yeah, having said that, not all people with afro hair are automatically just going to fail the FOX test. Some people will pass it, some people will fail it. But that's kind of what prompted me to make this video, because initially I thought it might be like a bad idea, but now I think there are pros and cons to it. Like one of the pros of getting a FOX test is the fact that, you know, you're gonna get tested beforehand, and if you are not compatible with a hair transplant, they'll let you know. And at worst, you've only wasted around 50 to 100 grafts, you know, for the testing. So you're obviously not going to get over harvested. You know, your recipient area is not going to be messed up or anything like that. So you'll basically just get sent back home. But on the flip side to that, you might really want a hair transplant, and you might live in somewhere like the US. So you'll have to travel all the way from the US, you know, spend all that money on the plane tickets, arrive at the clinic, get that FOX test, and you might fail that FOX test, and then in which case, you know, you'll get sent back home. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those. It's something that you have to really think about. And I think if you are doing your research into different clinics, I think it's best to ask that clinic beforehand if they require a FOX test or not, so you can make a decision about whether you want to go to that clinic or not. But basically, it also got me thinking about a couple of guys who, you know, went to Turkey to get hair transplants, and their transplant didn't turn out too well. One of them was this guy from the US about a couple of years ago, like 2 or 3 years ago. He went to Turkey. He went to some random clinic that I'd never heard of before. I think it was like quite a cheap one as well. And he got a hair transplant there. Now, initially everything seemed to go well. He was initially happy with, you know, the actual procedure. And then the first couple of months went exactly as expected. You know, he went through his ugly duckling phase, you know, the shedding phase. So then month 3 came, and, you know, he was looking to start growing some new hair. However, as the months went on, you know, nothing was really happening. Like, a few of the hairs sort of grew in, but that's about it. You know, I remember seeing his month 6 update, and there wasn't really much progress. Anyway, he waited till month 12, and pretty much the same thing. You know, there hadn't been much difference between month 6 and month 12. It was still just like a few hairs, like randomly scattered around his head, that grew out. But most of the hairs just did not take. So he was obviously very disappointed with his results. He contacted the clinic, and, you know, he wanted them to either, I guess, give him a refund or redo the hair transplant. They admitted that they were at fault. They told him that apparently, you know, one of the technicians, you know, didn't do a good enough job, and he no longer works there. So they offered him to do another procedure for free. Now, he made a video about this, and I responded to that video in the comment section. I just basically told him that he shouldn't go. I said to him, you know, if they failed you the first time, you know, that's not a clinic that you can trust. So if you want a second procedure, you should go to somewhere else, even if that means having to pay full price again. But he obviously didn't listen, and he trusted that the clinic was gonna do right by him. So he went back there for his second procedure. And again, you know, the procedure went well initially. The first few months went by exactly as planned, but to be honest, he got pretty much the same results. Month 6 came, not much results. Then he did like I think it was like a 1-year video post second procedure. And it was the same thing, you know, like a few hairs grew in here and there, but he was still mostly bald, like, and he was like a Norwood 5 or 6 at the time, you know, in the beginning. So he would have needed like at least, you know, 6, 7, 8,000 grafts for a good procedure, for a good results. But yeah, anyway, so he got, you know, those 2 procedures from that one clinic, and they were both failures. And I just got to thinking, maybe if they had done a FOX test beforehand, they would have determined that, you know, he wasn't a good candidate for the procedure. You know, if that's the case, you know, maybe his hair was just too curly underneath the scalp and they were just not able to perform the procedure on him. Maybe that's why he didn't get the good results. And then there was this other guy. He was from, I think he was an African guy. Now with this guy, it was quite obvious that he wasn't a good candidate for a hair transplant to begin with, because his donor area just wasn't very good. Like his hair just wasn't very dense, and he had never had a hair transplant before. He was just naturally, you know, not very dense in the back. And some people are like that, you know, not everyone has good density naturally. So anyway, he went to a few different clinics. They turned him down, which was another red flag. You know, if clinics are turning you down, that means that you're not a good candidate, so maybe, you know, hair transplant isn't for you. But he was obviously still determined to get a hair transplant, so he went to a clinic that pretty much accepts everyone, which is Asli Tarkan. And yeah, like I've noticed with Asli Tarkan, you know, a lot of people who get turned down by other clinics, they end up, you know, going to Asli Tarkan because, like I said, they don't really turn anyone down. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why they get such a bad rep, because they take on patients who are not good hair transplant candidates to begin with. So needless to say, a lot of those patients end up getting not very good results. So people often think maybe it's the clinic, maybe they're just not very good at their job, but in reality is they're taking on patients who are, to begin with, just not good candidates for a hair transplant. Yeah. So anyway, he goes to Asli Tarkan, they perform the procedure. Now, he was like a Norwood 7. And before his procedure he had SMP, because that's what he was rocking before, you know, the procedure. And so yeah, they performed the hair transplant. Everything went well initially, but as the months went on, he didn't really see much progress. Like some of the hairs grew, but not enough. But most importantly, his donor area was kind of ruined, and he started having some sort of weird like skin condition. He started having like lots of like lumps and bumps on the back of his head that would bleed out, and they would have pus inside them and stuff like that. He would have to see a dermatologist, and yeah, like his hair transplant basically didn't turn out good at all. And I was just thinking as well, like maybe he would be another patient that would have benefited from getting a FOX test beforehand. So anyway, I'm kind of in 2 minds about the FOX test. I think for some people it will be good, but maybe for some others it might not be so good. So let me know what you guys think about the FOX test in the comments below. Do you think it's a good idea, or do you think that they shouldn't be doing a FOX test? And also, would you consider going to a clinic that does a FOX test, even though when you get to that clinic you might end up failing that clinic? You might end up failing the FOX test and having to return back to wherever you're from, you know, without a hair transplant. But at the same time, that FOX test could save you from potentially getting a really bad procedure because you might not be a good candidate. So yeah, it's one of them ones. But like I said, anyway, this girl that made a video about it, she obviously got a good result. I'll just put some pictures up here of what her month 5 looks like. But yeah, I saw her month 6 video update recently, and she seems to be not 100% happy with the results. And I don't think she's 100% happy with the clinic as well, because I noticed that she was complaining quite a bit. And listening to what she was saying, I think a lot of her complaints are because of the fact that she didn't really have like realistic expectations beforehand. So one of her complaints was that her donor area just wasn't as dense as it was before. And so when she got like twists in her hair, she had like wider gaps, so you can see more of her scalp in the donor area. Whereas beforehand, when she used to get twists before the operation, before the hair transplant, she didn't have those wide gaps. Now, I've seen her donor area and it actually looks really, really good overall. But I think because she had 4,000 grafts removed, you know, after that, your donor area will not look the same. So you can't have those kinds of unrealistic expectations of your donor area looking just completely untouched. You know, she's had 4,000 hair grafts. 4,000 grafts is around 8,000 hair follicles on average, because on average, like a person would have like around 2 to 3 hair follicles per graft. So 4,000 hair grafts equates to over 8,000 hair follicles that have been removed from the back of her head. So of course it's not going to look the same. But yeah, I think her expectations were a bit, you know, too unrealistic. But like I said, overall her donor area looks good. And I think when she grows her hair out more, it's going to be less and less noticeable. The other complaint that she had was actually quite valid. She was under the expectation that they were going to take out around 2,700 hair grafts, because I think she was around Norwood 2 or something like that. But without telling her during the procedure, they actually took out 4,000 grafts instead of 2,700 like they promised her beforehand. So I think that complaint that she had was actually quite valid. And I've talked about this before, you know, when you're doing your research, I think it's very important to know approximately how many hair grafts you might need. And I think if you're like a Norwood 2 to Norwood 3 and they're telling you that, you know, it's going to take 2,000 to 3,000 grafts, you need to be adamant with them and be assertive with them and just tell them, okay, so I don't want any more than 3,000 grafts, so just make sure that, you know, 3,000 grafts is like the maximum that you're going to take. You know, you need to tell them that before the procedure, because otherwise they might end up taking a lot more. They might end up taking like 4,000 or 5,000 grafts. Now, I feel like one of the reasons that they might have taken out a lot more than 2,700 like they said initially was because of, like I said, her hair was like very, very curly. And maybe as they were doing the extractions, like I said, they didn't do a FOX test on her. So maybe they noticed that a lot of the grafts that they were extracting were damaged during the extraction. So maybe they needed to take out a lot more grafts just to make her hairline look full, because the survival rate wasn't looking too good. So maybe out of those 4,000 grafts that they extracted, maybe only around 2,500 to 3,000 grafts actually survived. So maybe that's why they took out so many grafts. But anyway, like I said, I think it's important to have like a grasp, like an idea of how many grafts that you may need before the procedure. Now, the other complaint that she had was in regards to the service that she received. So again, I think in this instance her expectations were a bit too high. Like she thought that she was going to get the same type of care that she would get back in the UK, and the reality is it's not really the case. You know, when you go to Turkey and you're paying like $3,000, $4,000, you know, dollars for a hair transplant, you know, you can't have unrealistic expectations in regards to, you know, how well they're gonna look after you and stuff. So she kind of found it a bit annoying how some of the people that worked there kept forgetting her name and kept asking her what her name was because they just didn't know, and you know, stuff like that. And I think what you have to realize is that when you're paying economy prices, you can't then expect first class service. It's like if you pay for a first class flight, you know you're gonna get looked after. You'll get your little booth or whatever, and your flight attendant will be all polite and stuff, and she'll come with your food like, here is your Scandinavian steak, sir, medium rare, just as you requested, with slow cooked roast potatoes. Enjoy, bon appetit, sir. And then they'll go to economy class with a tray of food and just throw it at you like, here's your slop. Oh, fuck off. You know, completely different attitude. So yeah, it's very different. You get what you paid for at the end of the day, you know what I mean? So you can't have unrealistic expectations when you're paying a low price, you know? But overall, I would say most of these clinics in Turkey still treat you good. And she even said in her video that, you know, overall she got a good care and good customer service. So I've just went on the Longevita website, and here is what they say about the FOX test. So they say, a FOX test is where the surgeon takes approximately 100 grafts from the donor area to see how many complete grafts they can extract. Since afro hair follicles curl under the skin, it's important to see if the roots are suitable for extraction. So yeah, I'll link this page to this video so you can find it in the description. But yeah, it's not just Longevita. I think more and more clinics are going to start to implement this FOX test, just because more and more clinics are experiencing, you know, difficulties whilst extracting hair grafts from people who have afro hair texture. But anyway, before I go, I just wanted to mention something else that I've seen as well. So I just came across this video of a guy who went to Asli Tarkan, and yeah, it's weird because when I first saw what his hair looked like right after the procedure, it just looked a bit strange to me. Like, so then I had a look at other people who also went to Asli Tarkan recently, and it's all the same. Like, I've noticed that they've started for some reason implanting the hairs in straight lines, like in rows, like row after row after row, whereas in reality they're supposed to implant the hairs in a scattered fashion so it looks natural, because when you start doing row after row after row like that, it ends up looking like doll's hair. It just doesn't look very natural at all. And I've noticed that they're doing that with every patient. You know, I don't know how long they've been doing it, but it must have been recently, because I know that they didn't used to do that. So yeah, I just feel like over time they seem to have regressed, and at the same time they've put the prices up. So yeah, it's a strange one. But yeah, as you can see in this photo here, like even in his temples area, you can see they've done it in rows instead of doing it in a scattered pattern. So yeah, it's very strange. But yeah, because when you do that, the results are not going to look natural at all. You know, it's going to look kind of fake, like doll's hair, like I said. So yeah, it's just very weird that they've started doing that for some reason, and I don't even know why they've done that. It's just bizarre. But anyway, that's just something that I noticed recently. Let me know what you guys think about it. But anyway, as usual, if you've got any questions, drop them down in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.